Welcome, friend. I'm Jack, host of the channel, and today we're diving into another episode. Pour yourself a drink and get comfortable, because I've got a powerful story coming your way. If something hits deep, drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's get into it.
Before that moment, life had already thrown its challenges my way. I grew up in a small town, working through college and getting by as best I could. Hard work never intimidated me, but I always felt like something was missing. Marriage followed, not out of love, but more out of obligation, and that slowly drained whatever passion I once had for life. Every day became a checklist, a job, a house, and eventually a divorce. The divorce wasn't a shock. I was stuck in a dead-end job, doing the bare minimum, and my relationship at home wasn't any better. My wife at the time, Sheila, became increasingly distant, and one day I came home to find the house completely emptied. She had moved in with her lover, and from there, my life began to fall apart. The next few years were a blur of trying to piece together a life that had never been solid from the start. Which brings me to a typical morning in Honolulu, sitting at Starbucks, sipping my usual frappuccino, a daily routine the baristas knew by heart. The air was warm, like it always is in Hawaii, and I felt the familiar tension between enjoying the moment and being haunted by my past. I reflected on the 5 years since Sheila left me and how much my life had changed since then. I got a few dirty looks from people in line when one of the girls brought my drink over with a cheerful, "Good morning, Mr. Mitchell." Maybe the tip helped with that. It was a typical Hawaiian day, clear skies with temperatures in the mid-70s and a mild breeze from the west off the ocean. Actually, that's a silly thing to say. Hawaii is in the middle of the Pacific, so the wind's always from the ocean, no matter which direction it's blowing. I sat outside at my small table under a palm tree, which provided just enough shade to protect me from the sun. My driver Keanu and I enjoyed the peace and quiet. I was trying to read the Wall Street Journal while Keanu was busy checking his eyelids for light leaks. But today my mind kept drifting back over the last 5 years. Yep, it's been 5 years since Sheila divorced me and ran off with her lover. Back then, I was living in Western New York, working as a tech for a big manufacturing company. I wasn't the best employee, to be honest. I was below average, didn't try very hard, and wasn't exactly ambitious. Whenever I finished a task, I'd just wait for the next one, instead of seeking out more work. I'd usually hide out, just like normal. One day, after finishing my assigned task, I was browsing the web when my supervisor came into my cubicle. "The department manager wants to see you," he said. It was an unusual request, and I felt a bit uneasy. We walked to the elevators together. When we arrived at the manager's office, his secretary, Margaret, asked us to wait. "I believe Mr. Martin is on the phone. He'll see you shortly," she said. That shortly turned into a 30-minute wait, the longest 30 minutes of my life. When we were finally called in, we weren't even offered a seat. "Jim," he started, "you've been with us for—" He paused to check the papers on his desk. 15 years. I regret to inform you that we no longer need your services. You'll get a year's severance and any accrued vacation in your next paycheck." And that was that. I was fired. What the hell was I going to do now? I was too old to start over. What would I tell Sheila? I packed up my things in a daze. I don't remember much about the next few hours, but I ended up in a bar, downing my third or fourth double when the bartender suggested I'd had enough. I drove home carefully. No point in getting a DWI, I thought. I pulled into the garage, but drove right through the back wall. I figured Sheila must have had some work done to shorten the garage. The noise should have brought her out, but it didn't. When I got to the door, it was unlocked. I opened it to find an empty kitchen. The table, chairs, and even the appliances were gone. My first thought was, we've been robbed. I stumbled into the living room. Everything was gone. The room was as bare as the day we bought the house. My foggy brain didn't register the pile of my stuff in the middle of the room. I climbed the stairs to the bedroom and found the same emptiness. Well, not entirely empty. All my clothes were in a pile on the floor, and the pile smelled bad. I soon realized the stench was urine. The closer I got, the worse it smelled. In my drunken state, I vomited right on top of the pile. I went back downstairs and curled up on the carpet. I can't say I fell asleep. I think I just passed out. When I woke up the next morning, I had the worst hangover ever. My head pounded, my mouth tasted awful, and my body was stiff from sleeping on the floor. I stumbled to the garage and noticed my wife's car was gone. I made my way back to the kitchen, thinking maybe some coffee would help, but there was none. She took that too. It took a few minutes for my brain to fully wake up before I noticed the note on the counter. I picked it up and started reading. Jim, we've been married for almost 14 years. In that time, you've turned out to be a loser. You're not a good husband, provider, or lover. You're selfish and only care about your own needs. I've moved in with my lover and will be contacting a lawyer to start divorce proceedings. Sheila. Well, I guess I knew how the rest of the day would go. Sheila worked as a legal secretary for a big law firm. I suspected she was upgrading to one of the attorneys and planned to use the firm to take me down. Thank God we didn't have kids. I was pretty mad, so I looked for the house phones. They were all gone. At least I still had my company cell phone. They hadn't asked for that back yet. As one last act of defiance, I called the bank and reported my wallet stolen. A helpful woman froze all my credit cards, checking and savings accounts. The debit card was blocked too. I hung up with a smile on my face. Sheila was going to be furious when she couldn't use any of our joint cards. I packed what I could into my car. She had taken all the luggage. I couldn't even find a garbage bag. She took everything. One reason someplace else was my favorite bar was because it was owned by my best friend since childhood, the only person I trusted completely. So I headed there for advice. Bartenders give the best advice, and my friend had an ex-wife, so he might know a good divorce attorney. I also had to figure out how to hide my final check from Sheila. I didn't want her to get it. When I walked into the bar, Martin poured me a double. After last night, I figured you needed one, he said with sympathy. I downed it in one gulp. He looked shocked. I wasn't the type to drink that fast. So I told him everything, starting from when I left the bar the night before. By the time I finished, I had the name of his divorce lawyer, a place to stay in the apartment above the bar, and an IOU for the amount of my severance check. Martin agreed to include the check in one of his deposits and give me the money as I needed it. Time passed, and so did the divorce. A year later, I found myself divorced and living in a small one-bedroom apartment in a sketchy neighborhood. My dear wife had hired a shark of a lawyer. She worked for the firm, after all, and she cleaned me out. She got the house, the investment account, and our checking and savings accounts. She almost got alimony, but since I had no job or money, the judge took pity on me and waived it. Lucky for me, no one asked about the severance check. It might seem like Sheila made out well, but the house was underwater on the mortgage. The savings account had less than $1,000. The checking account was drained by monthly bills, and the 401k had barely $2,000. Best of all, most of the credit cards were maxed out. Sheila must have gone on a spree before the divorce was final. I think she planned on leaving me with the debt, but since I had no income, the judge stuck her with the bills. It took a week to wipe the smile off my face. Eventually, I had to get a job. I ended up working as a janitor for the school district, pulling night shifts. My days were spent either on my computer or hanging out at my friend's bar. Guess what I did with all my free time there? I was well on my way to becoming a heavy drinker. One morning, I found a Powerball ticket in my pocket. I didn't remember buying it, but I knew the bar sold them. I tossed it on my desk and went to the bathroom. After taking a shower and brewing some coffee, I noticed the ticket again. Once my PC booted up, I checked the numbers on the Powerball website. I triple-checked the ticket. The numbers matched. There was only one winner, and the jackpot was $250 million. Yep, millions. I quickly signed the back of the ticket. Next, I called my divorce lawyer. It was Sunday, so I got his answering machine. A couple of hours later, he called back. Apparently, he didn't have much going on that day either. I won, I told him. We set up a meeting for Monday. The next day, we spent hours discussing trusts, investments, tax strategies, and most importantly, how to make sure my ex didn't get any of the money. It took almost a month to set up all the accounts and finalize everything. 2 weeks later, I was looking at property in Hawaii. I wanted a luxury place on one of the hills near Hawaii Kai, a suburb of Honolulu. It took almost a year to get the house just how I wanted it. Now I'm finally settled in, and enjoying the good life. My favorite memory from this time was when I got a call from my lawyer. Apparently, my ex-wife had heard about my lottery win and wanted to talk. My lawyer shut her down immediately. That's when I knew I'd picked the right guy. So there I was, sipping my frappuccino and lost in thought when I got that strange feeling of being watched. I was about to alert my driver, but then I looked around and noticed a little girl, maybe 5 or 6, staring at me. She had long, dark hair and the most beautiful blue eyes I'd ever seen, but they were full of sadness. She was clutching a small doll and holding a blanket to her nose. She tugged at my heart, and all I wanted to do was hug her and take her problems away. I gave her a friendly smile. I didn't want to scare her. At the same time, I scanned the area for a parent. Surely no responsible parent would let a child wander around like this. But I saw no one. I signaled one of the counter girls and, using some improvised gestures, asked her, "Who is she?" She asked the others, but they all just shrugged. By then, a few women sitting nearby had noticed. When I looked at them, they all shook their heads. No one knew the girl. She started to tear up, so I gave her a soft smile and handed her my clean handkerchief. She took it but just stood there holding it. I gently wiped her tears away, and in return, she gave me a small smile and handed back the now dirty hanky. A couple of the women came over to talk to the little girl. One pulled out her phone and called emergency services. I heard her tell the operator about a lost child. After she hung up, she turned to me and said, "5 minutes." The little girl began making soft noises, so I ran my fingers through her hair and gave her a gentle kiss on the top of her head. She looked up at me and said, "Grazie, babbo." It had been 20 years, but I recognized the phrase. She was speaking Italian. "Thank you, Grandpa." Back in the late 80s, I'd been stationed in Italy with the U.S. Army and learned quite a bit of the language. If you wanted to get anywhere with the local women, speaking Italian was essential. And now this little girl was speaking Italian. "Bella, come stay. Mi chiamo Jim," I said, which means, "Hi, beautiful, my name is Jim." Her eyes lit up, and she smiled widely, hugging me even tighter. "Bella," I asked her, meaning, "What's your name, beautiful?" She responded, "Bella." I tried a few more times to get a different answer, but all she would say was, "Bella." So I shifted gears. "Acqua?" I asked, meaning water. She smiled a little, so I took her hand and we walked into Starbucks. As we looked at the drink cooler, one of the baristas made her a small caramel frappuccino. After just one sip, Bella was hooked. She smiled at the barista and said, "Grazie." We returned to my table, and Bella sat beside me, sipping her treat slowly. I noticed a Honolulu police cruiser pull up, so I waved at the officers. They came over, and I explained that Bella seemed either lost or abandoned. One officer tried speaking to her in English, but it wasn't working. His frustration was clear, and that's when his partner saw the smile on my face. "Do you know why she's not talking to us?" the officer asked me. I nodded. "She only speaks Italian. My Italian is rusty. It's been 20 years, but I've managed a bit. Do you have anyone who speaks the language?" At that moment, Bella tugged on my shirt and whispered, "B." I understood. Bathroom. I asked one of the women nearby to help, but Bella wouldn't go alone, so the three of us went together. I waited in the hall, and Bella called out a couple of times just to make sure I was still there. When we got back, the police told me they couldn't find anyone who spoke Italian, so they called Child Protective Services, and a caseworker was on the way. 2 hours later, after having lunch with the officers and Bella at McDonald's, she knew exactly what she wanted. We returned to Starbucks. A furious caseworker was waiting for us, immediately yelling at the officers. "Why did you make me wait so long? You wasted my time," she shouted. The officers weren't having any of her attitude, and soon a shouting match broke out. Bella was scared, so I took her away from the noise. The caseworker saw me and screamed, "He's stealing that child! Stop him!" I pulled out my phone and made some calls. I had been a major donor to the governor's campaign, and I figured it was time to cash in on that favor. I explained who I was and the situation to one of the governor's aides. The reply was simple, "I'll take care of it." About 5 minutes later, the caseworker's phone rang. She answered it rudely, clearly ready to yell, but suddenly went quiet. I could hear her saying, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir," repeatedly. While she was still on the call, an unmarked police car arrived. I recognized the man who got out. It was the chief of police. He briefly spoke with the officers before walking over to the caseworker. "Hang up the phone, get in your car, and leave. That's an order. If you don't comply, I'll have you arrested," he said. The caseworker quickly left. The chief then approached my table with the two officers and introduced himself. "Did either of my officers treat you poorly or act discourteously during your interactions?" he asked. "No, sir. They were polite and helpful. They've been trying to find a translator to help communicate with the girl," I responded. The two patrol officers smiled at me. The chief sat down, and we began discussing little Bella. The officers returned to their patrol duties while we brainstormed what to do with my new little friend. We decided that Bella would stay with me until her parents or relatives were found, and they would continue to look for an Italian translator. My driver had gone back to my house to do some yard work, so I called to arrange for a pickup. The rest of the afternoon would be spent shopping for a wardrobe of little girl clothes for Bella. We headed to Ala Moana Mall for a busy afternoon of shopping, and I asked my driver's wife, Alani, who was also my housekeeper, to come along and help pick out clothes for Bella. Keanu and Alani arrived about 15 minutes later. On the ride to the mall, Alani asked me all about Bella. Once we got there, the girls visited all the children's stores, while Keanu and I made multiple trips to the car carrying bags. If I recall correctly, we went to the Disney store, Gap Kids, Janie and Jack, and the Children's Place. We didn't buy something at every store, but we certainly tried. My American Express card got quite the workout. Bella and Alani became fast friends. They chatted the whole time, neither understanding the other, but that didn't matter. They spoke the universal language of women shopping. I don't recall which store it was, but both of them stopped to stare at little girls' bedroom furniture sets. We didn't go inside, thankfully, but I had a feeling we'd be back. By the time we finished shopping, it was too late to cook dinner. I was elected to treat everyone, so I suggested antipastos on South Beretania Street in downtown Honolulu. I thought maybe someone there would speak Italian or could direct me to someone who did. After all, it was an Italian restaurant. Though no one there spoke Italian, the owner promised to keep an ear out for a native speaker. He was fourth-generation Italian, and most of his Italian-speaking relatives had long since passed. But the food was great, and Bella loved her pizza, eating almost the whole thing. It was getting late as we left the restaurant. We hadn't even hit the freeway before both Bella and Alani were sound asleep in the back seat. Shopping really does wear you out. When we got home, Keanu and I unloaded the bags into one of the spare bedrooms. Alani and I settled Bella into the room next to mine, dressing her in a pair of Disney pajamas and helping her get cleaned up for bed. After Keanu and Alani left, I decided to have a small drink before heading to bed. As I sat on the lanai gazing at the stars, I heard a small voice call, "Poppy." I went inside to find Bella huddled in a corner, softly crying. It broke my heart. I picked her up and carried her out to my chair on the lanai. She cuddled in my lap and soon she was back asleep. We spent the night in the lounge chair. I was stiff the next morning, but it was worth it. Alani woke us up, asking what we wanted for breakfast. I looked at Bella and said, "Mangiare." She jumped up, grabbed Alani's hand, and they headed to the kitchen. Shortly after, Bella proudly brought me a cup of coffee, chatting away as if I understood everything she said. I helped her set the cup on the table to avoid spills, and she stood there watching me intently. I realized she was waiting for me to take a sip. I did, and with great enthusiasm, I said, "Perfetto!" She beamed from ear to ear. I noticed Alani standing in the doorway, watching with a smile. "Way to go, boss. Now go take a shower while Bella and I make breakfast," she said. One thing my mother taught me, always listen when a woman gives you an order. So I headed for the bathroom. As I was finishing up, I heard Bella's little voice call, "Poppy, prima colazione." Breakfast. When I opened the door, there she was, waiting for me. She took my hand and led me to the kitchen, where the table was set with my finest china. The silverware was placed haphazardly, but I gave her a big thumbs up for that. I got a smile and a hug. After breakfast, I started making calls, pulling in favors, and using other forms of persuasion to find a translator. As much as I was getting attached to Bella, I knew there had to be someone out there looking for her. She was too special a little girl to be lost forever. Let me pause and describe my estate. When I bought the property, there was a small guest house behind the main house. Since I didn't have any in-laws, I rented it out to vacationers on a monthly basis. The estate was part of a gated compound with top-notch security, so I charged a high rent. Because of the location and privacy, I usually attracted famous people who wanted to stay under the radar. My current tenants had arrived the night before. All I knew about them was that it was a husband, wife, and their small child. The wife was the breadwinner, with a high-profile job on national news. As Bella and I were enjoying breakfast, I heard a voice say, "Excuse me, could I borrow some milk for coffee and our child's cereal?" I knew there wouldn't be any food left in the guest house. Between renters, we always threw everything out because of the humidity. I smiled and replied, "No, but why don't you all join us for breakfast? I'm sure there's nothing to eat over there, and we have plenty of food." After a bit of hesitation, he agreed and went back to fetch his wife and child. When they returned, we introduced ourselves and sat down to enjoy one of Alani's wonderful meals. I took the opportunity to explain Bella's situation, hoping they might know someone who spoke Italian. Unfortunately, they didn't, but the news anchor was clearly intrigued by the story. We were all enjoying coffee from my Keurig, and Alani had brought out a selection of drinks, coffees, teas, and hot chocolates for the kids. My guests had fun exploring the choices. Suddenly, my house phone rang. Alani answered, then handed it to me. After a brief conversation, I said, "Good morning." A formal voice responded, "Please hold for the ambassador." Then I was placed on hold. A moment later, a man with a pleasant voice and a slight Italian accent came on the line. "Mr. Douglas, I am the ambassador to the United States from Italy. I understand you have found the child of one of our citizens." "Yes, sir," I replied, and I explained how Bella had been found and what we'd done so far. He listened quietly until I finished, then asked to speak to her. I handed the phone to Bella. "Pronto," she said. For the next half hour, she listened and occasionally responded with a C or some rapid Italian that I couldn't follow. Finally, she gave me back the phone. The ambassador summarized their conversation. Bella didn't know her real name, parents, or even her birthday. She'd been kept by her captors in small rooms, chained up since infancy. Her food was placed in metal bowls on the floor, and she was only allowed to wear the shift she was found in. She had only ever been called Girl, the only name she knew. The ambassador said they were sending a representative to investigate her background further. He added that they had looked into my background and decided that Bella would stay with me until her situation was resolved. The representative would arrive in 3 days and stay with us during the investigation. Bella and I were both agreeable to the plan. I spent the next hour answering questions from everyone at the table. When they finally finished, the chief of police showed up. I filled him in on the morning's events. Somehow it was decided that Bella needed a proper little girl's bed. Guess who got volunteered to buy one? Keanu brought the car around while Alani dressed Bella. Our renters decided to join us at the mall, though I suspected the husband wasn't thrilled about spending his vacation day shopping. With little effort, I convinced him to spend the day at the golf course instead. We all fit comfortably into my Bentley, and I drove us to Ala Moana Mall, while Keanu dropped the husband off at the golf course. Bella recognized the mall, and when I told her we were getting her a bed, she cried tears of joy. She practically dragged me to the store where she'd seen the pink bedroom set the day before. Ala Moana is a big mall, but Bella navigated it like a pro, leading us straight to the store without a single wrong turn. I'm convinced she'll be a fantastic shopper when she grows up. Though Bella didn't fully grasp all the nuances of shopping yet, she was learning quickly. All she knew was that she wanted the pink bed and the giant teddy bear that came with it. I handed Alani my gold card, and she and Bella went off with the sales lady to pick out sheets, pillows, and everything else to make Bella's room feel like hers. Everything was scheduled for delivery and set up by 5 p.m. Bella would be sleeping in her very own pink princess bed that night. We were a happy bunch, so we stopped at the food court for some junk food and ice cream. Bella was overwhelmed. She had never seen anything like the food court. She wanted to try everything, but Alani, ever the health food enthusiast, quickly put a stop to that. Still, Bella managed to sneak in a bit of junk food. She was just too charming to resist. At 3 p.m., we arrived home to find a large furniture truck already waiting. Bella's new bedroom set had arrived. The movers had most of the items off the truck, setting them in front of the garage, waiting for us. Bella was so excited that she walked right up to the biggest mover and started speaking to him in Italian. Soon they were walking hand in hand into the house, with Bella leading the way. She took him directly to the bedroom next to mine, pointing at the existing furniture and mimicking how they should move it into the hall and then into the empty room next door. The movers loved it. Before long, Bella was in charge, directing the movers who were happy to follow her lead. By 6 p.m., everything was set up just as Bella wanted. I walked the movers out to their truck and handed each of them $100 as a tip. At first, they tried to refuse, saying Bella was a joy to work with and the tip wasn't necessary, but I insisted, and they eventually accepted. Back inside, Bella, Alani, and my renter began organizing Bella's clothes and belongings into the drawers and storage spaces. Although we had bought what seemed like a lot of clothes, the drawers still looked quite empty once everything was put away. I realized more shopping trips were in my future. I sent Keanu to pick up food and retrieve the golfer, while Bella gave me a tour of her new room. The giant teddy bear was placed in the center of her bed, holding her little doll in its arms. Bella walked over to the bed, pointed to the big bear, and said, "Poppy." Then she pointed to the doll and said, "Bella." That simple gesture moved me to tears. Bella reached into her dress pocket and pulled out the handkerchief I had given her the day before. She came over, pulled me down to her level, and gently wiped my tears away. That night, I wore pajamas to bed, knowing I might have a visitor in the middle of the night. Sure enough, I did. This time, though, Bella wasn't scared. She just wanted to cuddle. Later that week, I received an email from the Italian embassy giving me the flight number and arrival time for Bella's tutor, Miss Gina Castillo. Keanu and I waited in the arrival lounge. When Gina came through the gate, she was stunning. Dark hair, olive skin, dark eyes, and about 5 feet 6 inches tall. I'm not great at guessing a woman's weight, but she had a perfect figure, and the business suit she wore only enhanced her looks. "Wow," I muttered, trying to hide my surprise. We exchanged the usual greetings, and after everyone was introduced, Gina squatted down to introduce herself to Bella in Italian. They chatted for a good 5 minutes. When Gina stood up, Bella was holding her hand. I felt a slight pang of jealousy, but Bella quickly pulled Gina over to me and took my hand as well. We left the airport with Bella walking between us, holding both of our hands. At baggage claim, Gina pointed out 2 small bags. I thought, not much luggage, and hoped she was having more sent later. When we got home, Keanu took her bags to one of the spare rooms, while Bella gave Gina a grand tour, proudly showing off her pink bedroom. The afternoon was busy. Bella and Gina talked non-stop, even through dinner. They disappeared into the back of the house, and about an hour later, they reappeared. Bella was in her pajamas, and Gina wore a long housecoat. Both looked fresh and clean. Bella kissed me goodnight and said something to Gina in Italian. Gina laughed and turned to me. "Bella wants to know if you're still going to tuck her in, or if you'll be tucking me in instead," she teased. I must have looked shocked because Bella said something else, and Gina laughed again. "Bella also wants to know if it's still okay to climb into bed with you if she gets scared, or if I'll be upset about it. She seems to think we'll be sleeping together," Gina explained, clearly amused by the situation. I was stunned, trying to think of what to say, while Gina just smiled. After tucking Bella into her new bed, I went looking for Gina and found her on the lanai, sipping a glass of wine. I poured myself a strong Crown Royal on the rocks and joined her. "We need to talk," I said. Gina gave me a serious look. "Absolutely," she replied. "I've learned a lot about Bella today." "I'm angry," I said. She chuckled. "I was just teasing earlier. You need to relax. First of all, Bella has never had any formal education or maternal bonding. She's essentially raised herself. Her language skills are similar to a 4-year-old's. She's never been taught basic hygiene, and she's never received affection in her entire life." I nodded as I processed what she was saying. Well, her language didn't seem that far off. I figured she was around 5 or 6. Gina shook her head. Sorry, but based on what I can tell, she's closer to 10 or 11. Gina went on to explain her qualifications as a child philologist, educated in Rome and Switzerland. Bella was essentially a blank slate, and we had the opportunity to help shape her into a productive member of society. I was determined to help. Bella thinks of this place as hers too, Gina noted. You'll need to be careful how you refer to it around her. I was still trying to process her age, but Gina kept going. Next, I'll begin teaching her English. As her English improves, I want you to start reading to her at bedtime. It will help her learn the language and also help her understand affection. We need to mimic the early bonding experiences children usually have. I can do that, I said, feeling proud. The next step is to model affection between adults, hand-holding, simple kisses, hugs, and touches, she added. It sounds like you've set up a lot of work for us, I said. How long will you be staying, and does your husband or boyfriend mind? I asked, hoping I wasn't crossing a line. She smiled. I don't have anyone in my life right now. As for how long, we'll see. Get some rest and make sure Bella joins you if she gets lonely, she added. I must have looked confused, so she clarified. Not me, Bella. In the following weeks, Gina fit seamlessly into the household. She and Bella were inseparable, like two parts of a whole. Wherever Bella was, Gina wasn't far behind. Gina was patient, always teaching Bella, blending Italian and English in a smooth rhythm. Soon, Bella began answering more in English. The next surprise came when the UPS driver delivered several boxes full of school books. Gina had arranged for homeschooling, and Bella was eager to learn, diving into the lessons with excitement. Gina set up a little classroom in one of the spare rooms, and they spent at least 4 hours each morning on Bella's education. After lunch, they did girl things, as they called it, and sometimes continued lessons before dinner. When Gina wasn't available, I stepped in as the teacher. Bella would diligently ask questions in English, and under Gina's strict orders, I answered only in English. Bella would sit with her Italian-English dictionary, flipping through pages, trying to understand my responses. The more she flipped, the more I knew I had confused her. But every day, her comprehension grew, and my pride in her progress deepened. 2 months flew by, and I was truly impressed by Bella's improvement. Gina was an amazing teacher. One morning during breakfast, I got a call from Washington, D.C. It was the Italian ambassador. It turned out that we had become the talk of morning news shows. My renter, the news anchor, had done a feature on child stealing with Bella as the focal point. There were clips of Bella smiling, holding hands with Gina and me, and footage of her at Starbucks in the mall. The ambassador and I talked at length, mostly about Bella's safety. Despite all efforts, the Italian government couldn't locate any family for her. No parents, no siblings, nothing. Bella was essentially an orphan. Unless someone adopted her, she would be sent to an Italian orphanage. I didn't hesitate. I'll adopt her, I said without a second thought. The ambassador chuckled. I knew you would, but I had to ask. He promised to handle the necessary arrangements, but his next question caught me off guard. What about Gina? Once you adopt Bella, her role will end. She's attached to the embassy. I was stunned. Bella would be devastated if Gina left. Could we get her a work visa? I could hire her as a tutor, I suggested. The truth was, I enjoyed having Gina around. She was more than just a tutor. She had become a vital part of the household. And if I was being honest, I felt a growing connection between us. The ambassador said, talk to her and let me know. That night, after Bella went to bed, Gina and I had our first serious conversation. I told her about my decision to adopt Bella. I expected her to be happy, but instead, she exploded. You're a good man, Jim, but you're an idiot, she yelled, her Italian temper flaring. Do you even understand the responsibility of adopting her? You can't just make such a huge decision without considering the consequences. She paced, clearly angry. I stood there, speechless. I just want to give her a family, a real chance at life. She stopped and softened her tone. I know your heart's in the right place, but this isn't just about you or Bella. It's about her future, and we need to make sure it's the right decision for her, she said, her voice gentle but firm. We can't rush into this. Bella has already been through so much. Adopting her is a lifelong commitment, and it's not just about giving her a home. It's about providing her with stability, love, and everything she's missed out on. I sat there, absorbing her words. I just want to give her a real chance, I said quietly. Gina smiled softly. I know, Jim, but we have to be sure this is what's best for her. We'll take it one step at a time. Let's see how she adjusts, and most importantly, we need to ask Bella what she wants. For the next month, Gina seemed distant. She was still caring for Bella, teaching her English, and helping her settle into her new life. But there was a tension between us. I didn't want to push her, so I gave her space, focusing on Bella and our daily routines. Bella, unaware of the conversations between Gina and me, seemed happy. She was learning quickly and was starting to communicate more in English. Every evening, we sat together and read books before bed, as Gina had suggested, and Bella seemed to thrive on the affection and attention. Then one morning, everything changed. Keanu and I had gone out for our usual coffee run, and when we returned, Gina and Bella were waiting for us at the door. Bella ran to me, wrapping her arms around my legs, and Gina smiled, a real, genuine smile that I hadn't seen in weeks. She walked over and hugged me, resting her head on my shoulder. "You're a wonderful man," Gina whispered. "The ambassador called. The adoption papers are being prepared, and Bella's already decided. She wants you to be her dad." I was speechless for a moment, looking down at Bella's beaming face. "Is that true, Bella? You want me to be your dad?" Bella nodded enthusiastically and said in her still broken English, "Yes, Poppy, my daddy." I hugged her tightly, feeling overwhelmed with emotion. Gina wiped away a tear and added with a teasing smile, "And don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. I'm here to stay too." The adoption process moved quickly after that. The paperwork was expedited, and within a few months, Bella was officially my daughter. Gina, meanwhile, had become an essential part of our lives. She moved into my room, and Bella started calling her Mommy without us even realizing when it happened. Our little family felt complete. Over time, Bella grew more confident. She adjusted to her new life with ease, and her bond with both Gina and me deepened. We spent weekends exploring the island, taking her to the beach, hiking in the mountains, and showing her all the beauty Hawaii had to offer. Bella's laughter became the soundtrack to our days, and her happiness was contagious. One evening, while we were all sitting on the lanai, Bella cuddled between Gina and me, and she looked up at me with her big blue eyes. "Poppy, when are you going to marry Mommy?" Gina and I exchanged a surprised look. I hadn't even thought about it, but Bella, in her innocence, had said aloud what I had been feeling for some time. "I think you're right, Bella," I said, smiling at Gina. "Maybe it's time I asked her." Gina's eyes filled with tears, and before I could even officially propose, she kissed me and whispered, "Yes." Bella squealed with excitement, and within a few days, she was already helping plan the wedding. It wasn't a grand event. We kept it small, with just close friends, Alani, Keanu, and a few of Gina's relatives. The ceremony was held at a beautiful beach park, with Bella standing proudly as our flower girl. It was simple, elegant, and perfect. A few months after the wedding, Gina and I welcomed our son Giorgio into the world. Bella was ecstatic to be a big sister. She took her role seriously, doting on Giorgio and helping us with everything. Watching her interact with her baby brother, I realized how much she had grown, how far she had come from the sad little girl I met at Starbucks. Our lives continued to revolve around our children. Bella blossomed into a confident young woman, excelling in school and making friends easily. Her bond with Giorgio was unbreakable, and our family was stronger than ever. Years passed, and as I watched Bella grow into a beautiful, kind, and loving person, I knew that every decision I had made, adopting her, building a life with Gina, creating this family, was the right one. Bella had changed my life in ways I never could have imagined, and for that, I would be forever grateful. Life settled into a beautiful routine. Bella continued to thrive, both at home and at school, and her bond with her little brother Giorgio only grew stronger. She would often sit with him in the evenings, reading him bedtime stories and teaching him little things she had learned during the day. Giorgio idolized her, following her around everywhere, and it warmed my heart to see how much love they shared. But just when everything seemed perfect, life threw us a curveball. It was during Bella's junior year of high school when we first noticed something was off. Bella had always been energetic and full of life, but she started coming home from school unusually tired. She brushed it off, saying it was just the stress of her classes and extracurriculars, but Gina and I were worried. She was pale, her appetite had diminished, and sometimes she complained about mysterious aches and pains. We took her to the doctor for a routine checkup, thinking it was probably just stress, maybe even anemia. The doctor ran a few tests, but nothing prepared us for the news that came next. I still remember the moment the doctor called us into his office. "I'm afraid it's more serious than we initially thought," the doctor said, his face grim. "Bella's tests show signs of leukemia." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. Gina gasped and grabbed my hand, her knuckles turning white. Bella, sitting beside us, was in shock. Her wide blue eyes, the ones I had seen full of life and laughter, were suddenly clouded with fear. "What does this mean?" I asked, my voice trembling. The doctor explained that they had caught it early and that with treatment, chemotherapy, and possibly a bone marrow transplant, there was a good chance Bella could make a full recovery. But the road ahead would be long and difficult. Bella was brave, braver than I could have ever imagined. She took the diagnosis in stride, telling us that she would fight, that she wasn't scared. But as her treatment began, the toll it took on her was evident. The chemotherapy made her weak, and she lost her beautiful dark hair. Gina and I, in solidarity, shaved our heads too. We became the bald trio, as Bella called us, finding humor in the midst of the struggle. One of the most touching moments during this time was when Bella's classmates rallied around her. The school organized a homecoming rally in her honor, and when Bella walked into the gym, she was greeted by hundreds of her peers, all of them with shaved heads, just like hers. It brought Bella to tears, and for the first time in weeks, she smiled that radiant smile of hers. The bone marrow transplant went well, and although the chemotherapy was grueling, Bella fought hard. There were days when it felt like we were on the brink of losing her, but she never gave up. Giorgio, too young to fully understand what was happening, stayed by his sister's side, offering her drawings and his favorite toys, trying to make her feel better in his own way. Months passed, and slowly but surely, Bella started to improve. Her strength returned, her laughter came back, and her hair began to grow again. The day the doctor told us that Bella was in remission was one of the happiest days of my life. We cried tears of joy, and Bella, ever the optimist, told us, "I told you I'd beat it." The next few years flew by. Bella graduated from high school with honors, and although she had considered staying close to home, she decided to spread her wings and attend college on the mainland. It was hard to let her go, but Gina and I knew that she needed to live her life, to explore the world beyond Hawaii. Bella thrived in college, making friends, excelling in her studies, and embracing every opportunity that came her way. She would call us often, telling us about her classes, her adventures, and how much she missed us. Giorgio, now in elementary school, idolized his big sister more than ever, counting down the days until her visits home. Then, during Bella's junior year of college, she met someone. His name was Marco, an Italian-American student studying architecture. From the first time she told us about him, we could hear the excitement in her voice. When she brought him home to meet us during one of her breaks, we immediately understood why she was so taken with him. Marco was kind, thoughtful, and treated Bella with the respect and love she deserved. It wasn't long before Marco became a regular part of our family. Gina and I watched as Bella and Marco's relationship blossomed, and when Bella called us one evening to announce that Marco had proposed, we were overjoyed. The wedding was beautiful, a simple ceremony held on the beach where Bella had grown up. Giorgio, now a teenager, walked his sister down the aisle, beaming with pride. Bella and Marco settled down in California, where Bella pursued a career in education, and Marco continued his work in architecture. They visited often, and our family felt complete. But life, as it always does, had one more surprise in store for us. One day, Bella called with the news that she and Marco were expecting their first child. Gina and I were ecstatic at the thought of becoming grandparents. When little Sophia was born, we rushed to California to meet her. Holding my granddaughter for the first time, I was overwhelmed with love, the same love I had felt the day I met Bella at Starbucks. As the years passed, we continued to live our lives in Hawaii, with frequent visits to see Bella, Marco, and Sophia. Our family had come full circle. Bella, the little girl who had once been lost and alone, was now a strong, independent woman with a family of her own. And as I watched Bella with her daughter, I knew that everything had turned out the way it was meant to. Bella had not only found her place in the world, but she had also given us all a new sense of purpose. A reminder that even when life throws its hardest challenges at us, there is always hope. Always love. In the end, it wasn't the lottery that had changed my life, it was Bella. She had been my true prize, the greatest gift I could have ever received.
Thanks for hanging out with me on today's episode. Brother, I'm Jack, host of this podcast, and it's great having you here. If today's story hit home, send it on to a buddy who might need it. Remember, we're all in this together, turning life's curvy balls into wins. If you have an opinion or story to share, then drop a line in the comments section. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss out. Until next time, keep your chin up and keep pushing forward. Stay strong, folks.